The strange thing is that most of us know how to love other people. We know how to comfort a friend who is struggling. We know how to forgive someone we care about. We know how to be patient with a child who is still learning. We know how to sit beside another human being during a difficult season of life. And yet, something changes when the person suffering is us. Suddenly, patience disappears, compassion disappears, understanding disappears. The standards become harsher, the voice becomes colder. The forgiveness becomes harder to find. For years, I wondered why. Why do we so often offer grace to others while withholding it from ourselves? Why does kindness seem natural in one direction and difficult in the other? And perhaps the answer begins with a misunderstanding. Because many of us were taught how to care for others. But very few of us were taught how to care for ourselves without feeling guilty. There is a phrase we hear everywhere. Love yourself. And yet, the more I hear it, the less certain I become that most people know what it means. In fact, I am not sure I knew what it meant either. Because when I was younger, I thought self-love was a feeling of confidence, a feeling of happiness, a feeling of being satisfied with who you are. But life slowly challenged that idea, because I met confident people who secretly hated themselves. I met successful people who never felt worthy. I met kind people who abandoned themselves for everyone around them. And I met people who constantly spoke about self-love while treating themselves with remarkable cruelty. So perhaps self-love is not a feeling at all. Perhaps it is a relationship. And like every relationship, it reveals itself through behavior. Not words, not beliefs, behavior. The question is not whether you say you love yourself. The question is, how do you relate to yourself when life becomes difficult? Because that is where the truth usually appears. The strange thing is that most of us already know what love looks like. We know how to recognize it when it exists between two people. We know what it means to stand beside someone during a difficult chapter of their life. We know what patience looks like, what understanding looks like, what forgiveness looks like, what loyalty looks like. But something changes when the person struggling is us. When a friend fails, we often see the whole story. Their effort, their circumstances, their pain, their humanity. When we fail, we often see only the failure, and I have always found that fascinating. Why is it that compassion flows so naturally in one direction and becomes so difficult in the other? Why do so many people extend understanding to everyone except themselves? Perhaps because many of us learned how to earn love before we learned how to receive it. We learned how to achieve, how to perform, how to prove ourselves, how to become useful, how to become needed, how to become admired. And somewhere along the way, many of us quietly began to believe that our worth depended on those things. That we deserved kindness only after success, rest only after productivity. Acceptance only after improvement. Love only after becoming someone else. But if that is true, then what exactly are we calling love? Because any relationship built entirely on conditions eventually becomes exhausting. Imagine having a friend who only cared about you when you succeeded. Who disappeared when you struggled? Who measured your value by your performance? Who withdrew their affection whenever you disappointed them? Most of us would not call that love. We would call that a transaction. Yet, this is how many people relate to themselves, and they do it for so long that it begins to feel normal. Years pass, sometimes decades. And eventually, a person discovers something unsettling. They have spent their entire life trying to become worthy of their own acceptance. Always improving, always fixing, always striving, always becoming. Yet somehow never arriving because the destination keeps moving. The standards keep changing. The conditions keep multiplying, and the peace they were promised never fully appears. This is why I no longer think self-love is about liking yourself. Some days you will not like yourself very much. Some days you will make mistakes. Some days you will be lost, confused, immature, fearful, selfish, human. The question is not whether those moments disappear. The question is, what happens when they arrive? Do you immediately turn against yourself? Do you abandon yourself? Do you become your own prosecutor, judge, and executioner? And eventually, a person discovers something unsettling. Because understanding is very different from excusing. Compassion is very different from avoidance, and acceptance is very different from resignation. To accept yourself does not mean refusing to grow. It means refusing to build your entire identity around your flaws. It means recognizing that a mistake is something you made, not something you are. Maybe this is why self-love is such a difficult concept, because it asks us to hold two truths at the same time. I am imperfect, and I am still worthy of care. I need to grow, and I do not need to hate myself in order to grow. I have weaknesses, and those weaknesses do not erase my value. Most people can understand these truths intellectually. Living them is another matter entirely. Because life eventually presents each of us with moments that expose the nature of our relationship with ourselves. Moments of failure, loss, rejection, embarrassment. Moments when the image we have built of ourselves begins to crack. And in those moments, something very important is revealed. Not who we pretend to be, not who we hope to become, but how we actually treat ourselves when the masks fall away. Perhaps that is where self-love lives. Not in confidence, not in positive thinking, not in admiration, but in the quiet decision to remain on your own side, even when life gives you reasons not to. To tell the truth without humiliating yourself, to take responsibility without condemning yourself, to keep growing without declaring war on yourself to stay, especially when every instinct tells you to leave. And maybe that is why so many people spend years searching for self-love without finding it. Because they are searching for a feeling, when what they are really searching for is a relationship. A relationship that, like all meaningful relationships, is built slowly, through honesty, through patience, through forgiveness, through understanding, through showing up again and again, especially on the days when it feels hardest to do so. The more I think about it, the less self-love seems like a destination, and the more it seems like a way of meeting yourself. Not only the parts that are easy to love, but the parts that are frightened, ashamed, uncertain, broken, unfinished. The parts that spend their lives wondering whether they are enough. And perhaps real self-love begins the moment we stop asking those parts to earn their place within us. The moment we stop treating acceptance as a reward. The moment we stop demanding perfection before offering kindness. The moment we stop believing that worth must be purchased through achievement, productivity, or approval. And gently begin to understand. You do not have to become someone else before you are worthy of care. You do not have to fix every flaw before you deserve compassion. You do not have to earn the right to stand on your own side. Because beneath all the striving, all the proving, and all the becoming, your worth was never the thing that needed improvement. You always were.